Welcome back. Okay, so we feel pretty comfortable with React and Redux. We know that they're there for us to use to optimize this part, right? The part where JavaScript has to constantly adjust to user interactions and re-render, paint, and layout. Okay, so this makes sense, but let's talk a little bit about this part, where we have a ton of JavaScript files and we somehow need to deliver them to the client, to the browser, so that we can render something. As our apps get bigger and bigger, especially with single-page applications, we have more and more JavaScript files. So we have a need for something called a bundler, something that bundles all these files together so that whether we want to put it all into one or divide them up, it does it so nicely without us having to do it manually. You might remember in the Performance Part 1 exercise, when we worked on the Keiko website, well, we manually had to copy and paste the JavaScript from one library into the other, then minify it, and that's a lot of manual work that you wouldn't want to do, especially as our apps get bigger and bigger. So things like bundlers are able to manipulate and combine even CSS and HTML files into one. They can combine JavaScript files, they can uglify, they could optimize images. They can do a ton of really cool things to maximize the delivery of our files. And up until this point, we were lucky enough because Create React App did this for us. Whenever we ran npm start or npm build to build our files for production, Create React App underneath the hood was using something called Webpack to do this for us. For the next couple of videos, I want to introduce you to Webpack and bundling files. Although tools like Create React App do a really good job for us, we still want to know how things work underneath the hood. And when it comes to bundling, oh boy, there's a ton of options. Right now, the most popular is Webpack, and they just came out with Webpack 4. But there's a new up-and-comer Parcel, and then Rollup, who's always been popular. Now, all of these are bundlers. That is, they take in some files, and they spit out a file based on some optimizations so that we can deliver it to the browser. Now, Webpack is the reigning champion and is definitely a good tool. That's why Create React App uses it. But Parcel has come out recently with the idea of zero configuration. That is, unlike Webpack that requires a lot of configuration, we have to tell it every single detail of what we need done to the files and what we need outputted. Parcel says, hey, that's kind of hectic, that's kind of annoying. What if we just take care of it for you? Just tell us what files you want to put in here and we'll just spit them out for you, all optimized and ready to go. And then Rollup is also famous for similar things with Webpack, but really good at something called tree shaking. That is, avoiding any code that we don't really need to use and throwing it out before they bundle everything. Now, in this course, we're going to talk a bit about Webpack and do a nice little exercise and also a little demonstration on Parcel. But I want you to keep two things in mind. The first one is practical. That is, when should I use these? Well, Webpack is the tried and tested module bundler that if you have a large project, you're most likely using Webpack. And this is most likely set up at the beginning of the project by somebody who's a team lead or a senior developer. So use these for big projects. The second, well, use Parcel if you're on a project by yourself or it's a small project, you just need to get up and going. You don't need to worry too much about configuration files like Webpack. It's super easy to pick up and very easy to learn. Finally, use Rollup for when you're rolling out your own NPM packages. The second point, and the most important point, I think, is the fact that configurations and configuration files always change. One of my big pet peeves is how much time we dedicate to something like Webpack to understand its configuration, and then a new version comes out like Webpack 4 and things change. When it comes to configuration and bundling, we're always evolving. Things are always improving. And something that we learned 2 years ago might not apply now. So keep that in mind. Don't go overboard and read every single line in the Webpack documentation. When you have a problem, when you need to create a Webpack config file to configure your module bundling, well, by that point, you should know what Webpack does so that you can go into the documentation and read through them as you build your config file. You don't need to memorize every single thing. And that's why I'm a big fan of using something like Create React App. Create React App was developed by some of the smartest minds in web development. And they're working day in and day out to make that project as successful and as optimized and as well coded as they can. They're spending their time full time there. So why reinvent the wheel? If Create React App already exists, use their power, use their knowledge, use the constant updates that you get for free. And if you really, really need to, and you need to optimize, you can always do something like npm run eject in Create React App so that you have access to the Webpack config file. But keep this in mind. Configurations always change. Just know how they work and understand why they're useful. But don't spend all your time learning how to do a configuration file. Your time is better spent learning how to code properly, create less bugs, write better tests, all things that we'll talk about later in the course. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.